I sat here for a while and calculated like, yeah, they might have something else. I need to do this first and attack right away because my attack is so dominant here. My chess champions, welcome back. Today we're continuing Road to 2000. We're taking a look at my most recent game. In today's game, my opponent made a pretty early blunder, but we had to still capitalize and try to finish out the game. So the themes of today's video are going to be middle game ideas, as well as finishing off your opponent when you have an edge. So if that's something you struggle to do, to finish off your opponent when you have a winning position, then today is a good video for you. So opponent is in the 1700s, as are we. King's pawn. Opponent goes Sicilian defense. I go for the Smith-Morra Gambit, which is a new line I've been learning, which normally they would recapture here. You recapture with the knight. And basically the idea is you get quick development of your pieces. But in this game, my opponent went d5, which is the first time I've seen this move. Apparently, you're supposed to take, and then I think probably take. I think I forgot to check that second move, but I didn't know what to do, and instead I decided to push this pawn and kind of be annoying and prevent this knight from developing. Knight out. Bishop to f4. Instead, the computer wanted me to just take this pawn, and then I just have a big center, and black doesn't really have compensation, and now this pawn is really annoying, preventing this knight from getting out. So that's what I should have done, but knight f4, or sorry, bishop f4, g6, bishop b5, bishop d7. Here I finally realized, hey, let's just take the pawn and have a good center, and black is very cramped. Black goes e6. Now the problem in this position in general for black, or one of them is, at least one that I'm aware of, is that the dark squares in general around black's king are going to be weak for the rest of the game. Because I have this pawn clamping as well as this one, I also have my bishop ready to jump in on one of these diagonals at some point. Like I might bring the queen up and then do something like this or something like that at some point. So that's something to keep in mind for the long-term aspect of this game. All right, guys, and maybe I should have explained weak squares a little bit better. This is something that took me a while to understand, but by weak squares, basically we mean that there's no pawn that can help control that square. So for example, if the pawn were still on g7 here, then it would be helping control f6 and h6. But once it goes to g6, now these are forever weak because black is going to have to support them with pieces if they want to stop my pieces from infiltrating. So it's just a little bit more cumbersome for them, as opposed to if this pawn were still here and helping control those two squares. So this is something you'll hear more and more about as you move up the rating ladder and as you listen to higher and higher level commentators. I'm probably at the lower end of people who talk about weak squares, but that's fine. Maybe someday I'll be up there. Play continues. A3, I really didn't want black to be able to develop their knight with a check, with activity, and instead by playing a3 their bishop is kind of forever passive. They can go here, they're just staring at this pawn. They can go here, it's much more passive. So that was my idea, good or bad. Opponent goes check, and it looks like they're forking my bishop, but luckily we have knight c3 blocking the check and defending the bishop at the same time. Opponent goes bishop b4, which you can see from the eval bar. This was the blunder in the game. And from here, we can actually just take the bishop. Oftentimes, white has a knight that's still on b1, and there's like some other piece or something there. And you can bring a piece like this because this pawn might be pinned if this rook was undefended, where I couldn't take because they would take. But obviously here, we're defended. So that was the blunder by my opponent. And we take and they recapture. But it's not like we're immediately winning here. You still have to play out the rest of the game. We're only up 2 pawns, but black also still has these dark squared weaknesses. It's still a little complicated over here. So how would you guys play from here? Maybe give it, just a couple thoughts, a couple seconds. Think about just general ideas. What's going to be your plan? Are you going to continue developing? Are you going to simplify? Are you going to attack something? So firstly, our pawn is under attack. I decided to simplify first. So bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6. And here I went queen d2, aiding my development. So the queen is developed now, and we're defending this pawn, and we're setting up a battery on this diagonal for later use if we choose. Opponent goes knight e7, knight f3, continued the development. So yes, we're up 2 pawns, but that doesn't mean we just start doing willy-nilly stuff. You still have to follow the rules of chess, the principles of chess. Try to use all of your pieces, right? You want to leverage your whole army against the opponent and utilize everything. My opponent goes knight f5, which looks like a pretty good square for the knight. Centralized, adding pressure. And what would you guys do here now? Maybe just give it, 5 seconds. What stands out here? So there's nothing tactical. And when there's nothing tactical, often the answer is just continue developing. So let's castle. Let's get the king to safety. Let's put all our ducks in a row before we start attacking and doing stuff. So now we've gotten all our minor pieces out. We're castled. We've got the queen out. This rook is active. This rook can swing over at some point somewhere if we want. So things are looking good. Opponent also castles. Okay, now that we have our ducks in a row, here's where I want you guys to think about a middle game plan, ideas. Because yeah, we're up 2 pawns, but how are you guys going to finish this out? Give it 10 seconds. Think about it. Think about some ideas. So here's my idea. I'll show you over the next couple moves. So first move, bishop g5. Might not make sense yet. Opponent tries to continue developing, so rook c8. And now you have to find a really strong move for white. There's a couple good moves. There's one excellent move, I think. Give it some thought. This is a tough one to find. You guys got 5 to 10 seconds. So a good move would be bishop f6. So bishop f6 is good. The problem is, so your idea here is maybe at some point you're going to get your queen in and maybe checkmate them. And this is just such a dominant position for the bishop. The problem is, first of all, this knight still controls this square. Second of all, they can go h5 and at some point also go king h7, and then you can never get your queen in if they're controlling the square with their king here. So that's another kind of defensive resource for black. So you need something more forceful. And the forceful move I found was g4. The best move according to the engine. I was very proud of this move. Generally at lower ranks, you might see players move a pawn in front of their castled king 2 squares, but usually it's not a good idea. And as you move up the ranks, that becomes more and more clear and people are able to punish this better. But it still is the correct move sometimes. So you have to know when to break the rules. And this was a case where once we hit this knight, where's the knight going to go? So knight goes back. I mean, the knight could go here or here basically. And neither does much to save black. So they go knight g7. Now, how do you want to follow this up? 5 seconds. Bishop f6. Bishop f6, just clamping down the pressure. This is just such a monster square for our bishop. They also don't have a dark square bishop to contend it. They might be able to trade off, but then a pawn is going to sit on this square, which would also be super dominant. So my opponent just made a random move. And now how do you guys want to basically finish out this game? Queen h6, total domination, opponent resigns. And you might be thinking, okay, but what about knight e8 here? The problem is, yes, if we only had our bishop and queen, this might be sufficient because the knight defends this square, so there's no mate at the moment. But what do you guys want to do now in this position? Bring another piece into the attack. This is why you need your whole army, guys. Knight from f3 comes to g5, and this checkmate is unstoppable. So that was today's game. Let's just back it up a few steps here. So the critical moment. So yeah, my opponent blundered early. We continued playing normal moves, develop the knight, castle, yada, yada. That's all normal stuff. But then what often happens with players, let's say like 1,000 to 1,200 elo, somewhere in that range, or even higher, even for me still, the middle game, you get to a point like this where like, okay, I have all my pieces out. I've done all the principles, but like, how do I actually finish it out? In my opinion, the answer to that is you have to just see lots of good games with people commentating on like the cool ideas. You need, I call it like ideation. You need to see a lot of different ideas in different contexts so that you have like some tools and tricks like rattling around in your head. One other thing I learned recently from GM Igor Smirnov, who runs the chess channel or the YouTube channel Remote Chess Academy, is he talks about after you get all your pieces developed, that then you want to think about how do you infiltrate into the opponent's territory. And if you think about my plan in this game, it was very similar. We got all our pieces developed, and then I thought about, okay, how can I sneak this bishop in, get the queen in, get the knight in? So that was how this all played out. So it's, you know, the first half of the game, getting all the pieces developed generally happens kind of on your half of the board. And then you want to think about how to infiltrate, how to apply pressure into Black's camp. And in this case, we noticed all the dark squares around Black's king. In general, if you can ever get a pawn or a bishop on f6 like this, being super dominant, and maybe like this queen sneaks in, like it's just so tough to defend. So that's how I found this idea. Bishop g4 with the intent to reroute to f6. Opponent just tries to develop. And you could go bishop f6 here, but Black might have some resources and you need to be more forceful. So I sat here for a while and calculated like, yeah, they might have something else. I need to do this first and attack the knight right away. It doesn't matter that I'm opening up my king because my attack is so dominant here. And after the knight moves, bishop f6, it's basically game over. Queen comes in, opponent resigns. Even if they tried knight e8, you have to also calculate though that, you know, they could just leave the knight here. They don't even have to take your bishop. They can just leave this knight holding this square and they kind of survive for a little while. So you need this additional resource to come into the attack. And this is just another thing I've seen in many games where a knight on g5 attacking both of these pawns and like the queen is in, you know, it's just ideation. I've seen this many different times. And it's what led to the quite dominant victory in this case. So we're now 1759 rated. Things are looking good. Things are looking up. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really does help a lot. Dropping a like also really helps. I absolutely love making these videos for you guys. It's an absolute pleasure of mine, and I would love to be able to do this more. And if the channel gets bigger, then I can do more. So yeah, that's basically it. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks a lot.